Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salatu wa salamu ala ibadihi alladhina istafa khususan ala afdalihim wa khatamin nabiyyin Muhammadin al-amin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. We greet you with the greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Here from our sitting room in our apartment in Gombak in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Last Wednesday, I delivered a lecture entitled Beyond the Petrodollar, an Islamic response to the bogus monetary system. And that lecture was delivered at the Surau Al-Amin in Sitapak, here in Kuala Lumpur. Unfortunately, because of a breakdown in communication, the lecture was not recorded. And as a consequence of that, I'm now repeating the lecture here from my sitting room. The topic, Beyond the Petrodollar, an Islamic response to the bogus monetary system. This is the third of a series of 3 lectures on the subject of money, Islam and money. In the first lecture, we explained, using the Quran and using the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, we explained what is money in Islam. And if anyone differs with us, if they hold the view that we are wrong, then they must tell us what is right. That's only fair. We use the Quran to demonstrate that money in Islam is essentially something called dinar and something called dirham. And while some of our critics are not aware of it, the word dinar is located in the Quran, and the word dirham is located in the Quran. And when dinar and dirham are used in the Quran, they represent a coin made of gold, a gold coin, and a silver coin. And therefore money in Islam is essentially gold and silver coins, dinar and dirham. But then we found that in the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that when dinar and dirham were in short supply in the market, that other things were also used as money. What are those other things? They are always commodities of food consumption, commodities of food consumption, which are in abundant supply in the market, and which have a shelf life, not like mangoes which will rot. And in the Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ identified wheat and barley and dates and salt. And using analogical reasoning, we added to that rice, not the rice where the skin is taken off, rice. The rice which is called paddy, the skin is still intact. So that rice has a longer shelf life. Paddy rice. So rice can also be used as money. Sugar can also be used as money. Sugar can last for some time. And you would then buy and sell using sugar, using rice. You will therefore, to use the correct term, monetize your rice. Rice will now be used as money. What are the functions of money? Number 1, to be a medium of exchange. Number 2, to function as a measure of value. And number 3, to function as a store of value. And we found that money in Islam was always money with intrinsic value. What is intrinsic value? Intrinsic value is that the money has a value which is located inside the money. It's not located outside where it can be manipulated to make Indonesia a slave country and to make Pakistan and Bangladesh and Egypt and the rest of the Arab world, non-petroleum Arab world, miserably poor by manipulating the value of the money. No, once the value of the money is inside the money, no one can take it away from you unless they come and they take it out of your pocket. So money in Islam always has intrinsic value. And when you use such money, and provided that demand and supply remain constant, the same price you'd pay for a sheep or for a chicken 1,000 years ago, the same price you'll pay today. How wonderful, isn't it? How wonderful. No inflation. No inflation. This is money in the Quran and this is money in the Sunnah, and that's what we explained about money in the first lecture. That it was a reliable store of value. If you had your money stored 15, 20, 40, 100 years later, you can take out the money and you can still buy what it could have bought 100 years earlier. If you had enough money to buy 100 cattle and you kept that money for 100 years, 100 years later when you take that money out, you can still buy the 100 cattle, provided, of course, that demand and supply remain constant. That was the first lecture. And if there are those who differ with me and they say that I'm wrong, well then tell me what is right. Tell me what is money in Islam. Okay? And then we went to the second lecture in which Allah warned us. He warned us in the Quran, don't take them as your friends and allies. Don't take them as your friends and allies. No. And if you do that, you no longer belong to us, you belong to them. Who was Allah talking about? He was talking about an alliance of Jews and Christians. Ya Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have faith in Allah. La tattakhidhul yahuda wan nasara awliya. Don't take them as your friends and allies. Who? Ba'aduhum awliya'u ba'd. An alliance of Jews and Christians. When that Jewish-Christian alliance emerges, do not turn to them with friendship and alliance. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. Whosoever from amongst you turn to them with friendship and alliance, you belong to them. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. They are a wicked people. And Allah does not provide guidance for a wicked people. This is how we began the lecture. That Jewish-Christian alliance has now emerged in history. It is the Zionist Jews and Zionist Christians who have reconciled and made friendship and alliance. And they are the ones who control power in the United States of America. They control, and they boast of it, we control the United States. They control Britain, the power in Britain. They control power in France. They control power in the Western world, what is called Western civilization. They are the ones who have NATO as their military arm. And they are the ones who have a mysterious messianic agenda. They want to rule the world. They want to establish the political dominion, the economic dominion, the monetary dominion over all of mankind. That's what they want to do. That's arrogance. But not all Christians are like that. And not all Jews are like that. No. These are the Christians and the Jews of modern Western civilization. Russia is not a part of Western civilization, no. And Allah warns us in the Quran, don't take them as your friends and allies. Don't enter into their embrace. And that is precisely what happened. This is the people, this is the civilization which were empowered by a scientific and technological revolution. and applied that scientific and technological revolution to military science, and they gained a military power unique in all of human history, and they used that military power to oppress. At the point of a naked, bloody sword, they went to conquer the world. What is Britain doing in Britain? A little island called Britain. What is Britain doing controlling the whole of India? Tell me. Huh? And Britain is in China, and Britain is here, and Britain, the sun never sets on the British Empire. Why? Why this mysterious colonization of the world? Answer, they want to rule the whole world. And one of the strategies which they employ to establish their dominion over mankind is to change the money. To remove the money that Allah has ordained, dinar and dirham, to prohibit the use of gold as money, which is shirk. Are you hearing me? Did you hear what I say? It is shirk. It is blasphemy. Every Christian knows the meaning of blasphemy. Every Jew knows the meaning of blasphemy when a Muslim uses the term blasphemy. It is shirk to prohibit what Allah has permitted. And Allah has permitted gold as money, and they prohibit the use of gold as money. That's what they did in the International Monetary Fund. The Articles of Agreement prohibit the use of gold as money. So you can't use a dinar as money anymore. And by implication, since you can't use dinar, you can't use dirham. This is blasphemy. And whosoever follows them in that shirk also become party to the shirk. This is the monetary system which they created. And the second lecture explained that monetary system based on shirk. Based on shirk. And they use that monetary system with indescribable hatred and animosity and hostility for Muslims. That's what they are. And use that monetary system to exploit, to rip off, and to oppress, and finally to enslave people. And so today we find a world of Islam, and also the rest of mankind who are not supporting them, miserably poor, enslaved. And it's because you take paper and you give to that paper a fictitious value, no intrinsic value. And that fictitious value is such that when they print the paper, it's called hard currency. And once their paper is in demand, they can give a high value to it, and they can print as much as they want. And so they could buy the whole world free of charge. You could buy the whole world free of charge, once the donkeys are demanding the paper. And then when we Muslims also want to join in the fun of blasphemy, and we also surrender the dinar and dirham, and we also start to print paper. But our paper is not hard currency, no. So our paper can't be used. You take a whole basket full of Pakistani rupees to Midtown Manhattan, and you want to buy a cup of coffee. Huh? You think you could buy a cup of coffee with a basket full of Pakistani rupees in Midtown Manhattan? No, you can't. No, you can't. But you could take one US dollar and buy whatever you want in any village in Indonesia. Anywhere in the world you go with a US dollar, you can use it. But the Pakistani rupee can only be used here in Pakistan. So they have an advantage. We pointed out that this was an unjust system. We pointed out that this was bogus and fraudulent. And we gave an explanation of how the Bretton Woods Accord emerged. We explained to you how the US dollar became His Majesty, the US dollar. It replaced the British pound. We showed you how this marked the end of Pax Britannica and the beginning of Pax Americana. And gave to the United States a status which is now the ruling state in the world. We did all of this in the second lecture. Then we pointed out how Charles de Gaulle, General Charles de Gaulle, not a Muslim leader, no, a French leader, he recognized this to be unjust. And he stood up in the French National Assembly and he denounced this unjust monetary system in 1966. And the Zionists came after him and they removed him. Yes. But then the successors to Charles de Gaulle continued to attack the system until finally in 1971 the United States had to give up and they abandoned the US dollar being redeemable in gold. And so the entire monetary system has absolutely no links with gold anymore. It is 100% haram. And then we showed how from 1971 to 1973 the US dollar was in no man's land. I know you're listening to me, I'm talking about this again and again and again and again, so please bear with me. Why? Because there are others who can't hear and others who don't want to hear. So we have to repeat again and again and again and again. If you're fed up of listening to me, go listen to somebody else. But I have to keep on repeating for those who cannot hear and for those who don't want to hear. They're afraid to hear. Then Charles de Gaulle, his successors caused them to, the system collapsed in 1971. Then 1971 to 1973, the US dollar was in no man's land. And then in 1974, because of the Arab-Israeli war, they hit the jackpot with the birth of the petrodollar. I explained this in the last lecture, that the US dollar is now His Majesty the petrodollar, and that this petrodollar was prophesied by Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam in a hadith that we'll quote shortly. When the Arabs agreed with Henry Kissinger to his demand that we'll sell oil for only USD, which is haram. But they didn't understand what is haram. Then the petrodollar was born. And there was no limit now to the amount of petrodollars you could print. You can print as much as you want. There's no Charles de Gaulle to stop you anymore. No one can raise a finger because the system has no links whatsoever with gold. The link is now with oil thanks to the Arabs. The petrodollar is born. And then we showed how they use this system, monetary system, to consolidate their power, to be able to use this newfound wealth, which is of course fictitious wealth, to empower the banking system now to eventually take over. They want the money to expand and expand and expand and expand, and if it's not expanding at a fast enough rate, then they use a new system. I just can't remember what it is now. It's called to just put $7 trillion to the bank. I can't remember the word now. And the 7 trillion, when it goes with a check from the office of the President of the United States to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve then issues a check to the banking system for $7 trillion. That's not money as yet. No, it's just a check. But when the banking system now lends that money to Pakistan, or to a fellow called Mursi in Egypt, who said he was Muslim, and he said his organization, Ikhwan al-Muslimun, was a great Islamic movement, but he's still ready to borrow money from the IMF. It is when you sign the agreement to borrow that money and you agree to repay it, only then it became money. Yes, then it became money. So the banks now have unlimited money to lend, unlimited amount of money to lend. And I used the balloon in my last lecture to show that the balloon is expanding. The monetary supply, the money supply is constantly expanding. And the consolidation of political power in the world is constantly increasing to the extent that they could even try to attack Russia. with monetary and economic sanctions. And then I explained to you in the last lecture that all of this is meant to eventually cause the balloon to bust. Because the United States is not meant to rule forever. I use a verse of the Quran, you remember? In which surah was it? Do you remember? Suratul Mursalat, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Intaliku, proceed now, let the historical process now proceed, ila zillin, to a shadow, zi thalasi shu'ab, a shadow which will manifest itself in 3 stages. Our interpretation, our ta'wil, is that this shadow which will now emerge in the historical process in 3 stages is the shadow of Dajjal. In the first stage, it's Pax Britannica. The shadow comes in the second stage, Pax Americana. And then in the third stage and last stage of the shadow, the world will experience an attempt by the State of Israel to rule the world in what they would call Pax Judaica. When will the balloon burst? When the balloon bursts, not only will the US dollar collapse, but Brexit means that the euro will also collapse. That's why you had Brexit. So the entire world of paper money will collapse. No single money in the world will be able to survive. The Malaysian ringgit cannot survive independently. No. The Pakistani rupee cannot survive. The Egyptian pound cannot survive. The Indonesian rupiah cannot survive. None can survive because they're all interdependent. So when the US dollar collapses, when the balloon bursts, one day it'll have to burst. It cannot expand indefinitely. The entire system will collapse. And they want it to collapse because they want to introduce another monetary system, which is what we want to talk about today in this lecture. Beyond the petrodollar, what can we expect? Well, first of all, let us go back now to the hadith, which is in Sahih Bukhari. It's a very important hadith, a prophecy of Akhirul Zaman, in which Nabi Muhammad ﷺ prophesied that the river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold. You've heard it from me before. Others don't talk about it. I'm one of the few people who mention this hadith constantly, again and again. If you're fed up listening to me, go listen to somebody else. But I have to repeat it. The river Euphrates will uncover a mountain of gold. And people will fight for that gold. 99 out of every 100 of the combatants will be killed. And everyone will say, I will be the one who will survive. But the Muslims, the believers, must not touch that gold. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, that 99 out of every 100 of the combatants, that is, who fight in this war will be killed. This cannot therefore be conventional warfare. This would be a unique warfare in human history. There's never been a war like this before in human history. For the first time in human history, a war will take place in which 99% of those who fight will be killed. I hope the US Armed Forces listen to me. I hope the British Armed Forces listen to me, and the French Armed Forces listen to me, and the German Armed Forces listen to me, and the Singaporean Armed Forces listen to me. Don't listen to me, listen to the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Listen to him, because your life now depends on it. He said that 99% of those who fight in this war will be killed. That's what the Prophet said 1400 years ago. That war is around the corner. Not because Russia wants the war, no. That war is around the corner because they, the Zionists, the Judeo-Christian Zionist Alliance, which controls power in the United States and Britain and France and Germany, they want the war. They are lusting for that war. And the poor innocent people who have their brains brainwashed in all of these countries are being taken like cattle to the end. Because Russia says, Putin said it, President Putin said it, and we're proud of President Putin. He said, don't mess with nuclear Russia. There are those who don't like me because I praise President Putin, because I praise Russia. I say to them, the door is there, you can leave. Get out and just leave me alone. I don't need you. This is harsh language for you. I'm fed up of you. I'm proud of President Putin. He said, don't mess with nuclear Russia. Russia is not prepared to bend her knee to the Zionists. I wish we had governments in the world of Islam like that. President Hugo Chavez in Venezuela was like that, and he paid the price. Charles de Gaulle in France was like that, and he paid the price. Whoever stands up against them, pay the price. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in Pakistan stood up to them, yes. And while Zulfikar Ali Bhutto has his weaknesses and defects, we admire him. We admire Zulfikar Ali Bhutto because he stood up to them in 1973 to 1976. Zia-ul Haq in Pakistan had his defects, General Zia-ul Haq, yes. But then he also had a change of heart and he stood up and resisted them and he paid the price, yes. So for Russia to stand up, Russia knows there's danger. Imagine that Russia says to them, we're not afraid of you. We'll not bend our knees to you. And the Russian people know that nuclear war is coming. The Russian people know that millions and millions and millions will die